Here's a mind-bending question that'll make your brain hurt. If every single country on Earth is drowning in debt, who exactly is doing the lending? Think about it. The United States, over $36 trillion in debt. Japan, 250% of their GDP. Even developing nations are collectively sitting on trillions in borrowed money. So if everyone's a borrower, where's all this money actually coming from? The answer is going to blow your mind because it's not as simple as you think. Let's start with the big picture. As of 2024, global debt hit a staggering record of over $300 trillion. That's not a typo. 300 trillion. To put that in perspective, that's more than 3 times the entire world's GDP. Public debt alone reached $102 trillion, with developing countries owing 31 trillion of that amount. And here's the kicker. These numbers are growing faster than ever before. But wait, if all these governments are borrowing, someone has to be on the other side of that transaction, right? You can't just borrow money from thin air, or can you? Well, here's where things get really interesting. When a government needs money, it doesn't just walk into a bank and ask for a loan. Instead, it issues something called bonds. Think of a bond as an IOU. A promise to pay someone back with interest. The US Treasury, for example, sells treasury bonds. When you buy one of these bonds, you're literally lending money to the government. They promise to pay you back the full amount plus interest at a specific date in the future. So who's buying all these bonds? The answer might surprise you. First up, everyday people like you and me. Regular investors, pension funds, and retirement accounts all buy government bonds because they're considered super safe investments. If you've got a 401k or a pension, there's a pretty good chance some of your money is tied up in government bonds right now. You're a lender to your own government and you didn't even know it. Then there's the big players, banks, insurance companies, and massive investment firms. These institutions hold trillions in government debt. For them, bonds are a stable, low-risk way to park huge amounts of money. They know governments, especially developed ones, almost always pay their debts. But here's where it gets wild. Foreign countries. That's right. Countries lend money to each other all the time. China, for instance, holds over $800 billion in US Treasury bonds. Japan holds even more. When you hear politicians talk about owing money to China, this is what they mean. It's not like China handed over a briefcase full of cash. They bought bonds. Now, here's the really crazy part. There's one more lender that literally creates money out of thin air. Central banks. The Federal Reserve in the United States, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan. These institutions can purchase government bonds by simply creating money electronically. No printing presses, no gold reserves backing it up. They just make a digital entry and boom, new money exists. This is called quantitative easing and it's one of the most powerful and controversial tools in modern economics. During the 2008 financial crisis and the COVID pandemic, central banks went absolutely wild with this. The Federal Reserve alone purchased trillions in government bonds, essentially lending the government money that didn't exist until the moment they decided it should. Mind-blowing, right? But hold on, if central banks can just create money to buy government debt, why can't they do this forever? Why do we even worry about debt at all? Well, here's the catch. This only works as long as people have confidence in the currency. If a government borrows too much and a central bank creates too much money, inflation kicks in. Your money becomes worth less and less. Just look at countries like Zimbabwe or Venezuela, where governments printed money recklessly and destroyed their economies. So there's a delicate balance. Governments can borrow and central banks can create money to help out, but only to a point. Cross that line and the whole system falls apart. Here's another fascinating twist. In 2024, developing countries actually paid out $741 billion more in debt payments than they received in new financing. That's the biggest gap in 50 years. These nations are stuck in a vicious cycle, borrowing more money just to pay off old debts, while interest rates keep climbing. Meanwhile, interest payments are eating up government budgets everywhere. Some countries now spend more on paying interest than they do on healthcare or education. 3.4 billion people live in countries where debt payments exceed spending on either health or education. That's absolutely insane. So, let's circle back to our original question. If everyone's borrowing, who's lending? The answer is we all are, through our savings accounts, pension funds, and investments, through foreign governments buying each other's debt, and through central banks creating money from nothing. It's a complex web where everyone is both a borrower and a lender at the same time. The global debt system is like the ultimate house of cards. It works as long as everyone keeps playing the game, keeps having faith in the system, and keeps believing that debts will eventually be repaid. But what happens if that faith ever breaks? Well, that's a question nobody wants to find out the answer to, and that's the terrifying truth about global debt.